Right. I think I can probably dive in with some housekeeping and scene setting to kick things off if that works. So again, everybody, welcome to Quebec's AI Tax Credit Revolution, brought to you by Boast. I'm Paul Davenport, and I'm Boast's head of content, and I'm joined today by Joshua Martin, our Quebec-based specialist who helps companies navigate Quebec's most significant funding transformation in over a decade. So to set the scene at the highest level, Quebec just made a 271.5 million bet on AI innovation, fundamentally reshaping how the province supports tech companies. So, starting in 2026, the familiar CDAE program becomes CDAE-IA, with an exclusive focus on AI integration. Now, this creates both unprecedented opportunities and strategic challenges that every Quebec tech company needs to understand, which is why we're here today. So today, we'll show you exactly how to capitalize on this transition, whether you're AI native or a traditional software company, and demonstrate the multi-program strategies that can maximize your non-dilutive funding during this critical window. All right, so like I said, we have this agenda. We're going to go through the steps that we have listed here, but I invite folks to be very active throughout the call. We want to make sure that if there is something specific that we can help you tackle, we're addressing that problem. But the highest level, we're going to go through the AI transformation opportunity. We're going to talk about how to maximize the transition, specifically the strategic approaches by business type. So if you don't raise your hand, hopefully we have your industry covered. And then we're going to go over the implementation strategy, as well as Boast's multi-program expertise. Because like I said, we have experience both provincially and at the federal level, and you want to come work with us to make sure that you're not leaving money on the table. And then finally, advanced strategies and our competitive positioning. So for a little bit more about Boast and your speakers today, we specialize in helping organizations claim and access eligible R&D tax credits. We minimize audit risks and time-consuming processes in Canada and the United States. We combine in-house technical and R&D expertise with the latest AI technology to help companies effortlessly navigate the complexities of tax credits, enabling them to focus on what they do best, innovate. So, since our founding in 2011, we've helped more than 1,600 businesses across North America tap into more than 625 million in innovation capital to build stronger products, extend their runway, and drive world-changing innovation. Now, for Quebec specifically, this is where my buddy Joshua comes in. He's the R&D tax credit expert. And correct me if I'm wrong, Joshua, but the CDAE transition to CDAE-IA, this is maybe the biggest provincial level funding strategic shift in over a decade. Could you unpack the specifics of the program, what's changing, and what this means for businesses in the province?
Yeah, absolutely. As you mentioned, it really is a monumental change. So just a bit of context, CDAE program initially was conceived in the 90s to support kind of the adoption of e-businesses, IT infrastructure, the adoption of almost, think of it like the first wave of the internet. So Quebec really wanted to empower the local development and the implementation and the adoption of software, different ERP systems. Really wanted to help with the first wave of adoption of this kind of key technology. Fast forward to today, everyone's using different SaaS solutions. People are using the internet. I know this sounds almost crazy to say, but that's what the program was initially conceived for. And we have a really thriving IT sector in Quebec. Fast forward to today, Quebec wants to shift this program towards the adoption of AI, which is kind of another fundamental revolution. So we have the first revolution, which is adoption of the internet, software, different ERPs, IT solutions. But now it's pivoting towards, okay, we need these companies, often these same companies, to adopt AI solutions from top to bottom. So it can be, local SaaS Quebec companies adding AI and incorporating AI into their SaaS solutions, but it can also be an IT solutions provider, implementing, in Salesforce AI native tools. So the key drive behind this is the adoption and use of AI software, tools, algorithms, dashboards throughout different parts of companies' ways of doing business. It's really to accelerate adoption, creation, and just general use of AI in the business sector. So it's a pretty big shift. They're contributing generously to it. And I personally just think it's a really good step in the right direction. It's time to kind of modernize this program for the challenges of today.
I love that, Joshua. And again, just to put a finer point on it too, it's not necessarily excluding businesses who have taken advantage of CDAE historically. It's kind of just broadening it for the reality of the innovation ecosystem. AI is everywhere. We're hearing it everywhere, just like SaaS was everywhere a few years back. So it's being inclusive and adopting the best practices today and rewarding businesses with that entitlement. Now, timing. That's a big one. This creates a strategic window, doesn't it? How can companies have opportunities both now and in the future for the 2025 state of CDAE and then the future state of CDAE-IA?
Yep. So the key thing to note here is the program, the new program CDAE-IA, that's a mouthful, comes into effect for companies' fiscal years that are starting Jan 1st of 2026. So to really kind of dive into a use case, if you're December year end, if you're a December year end, you'll still be able to claim your 2025 fiscal year. Under the old CDAE rules. You could also claim under the new rules if you elect to do so. So there's actually optionality there. But starting for your 2026 fiscal, you'll be obligated to file under the new CDAE-IA rules and kind of guidance. So what we're already doing is helping our clients prepare for this change because, we're only, we're in Q4. It's time to almost prepare for Q1 of 26. And part of that is making sure that we're fully compliant for this new program, which comes into effect in January.
I love it. Okay, now getting a little more specific and into the nitty-gritty. Can we talk about the winners and losers here? I almost hesitate to frame it as winners and losers because I think with some key strategic tweaks, people who might fall into the losers or at-risk category today could absolutely capitalize on this program. So walk me through just some of the preparation and competitive advantage that you'll gain from doing that work today. And we'll go even deeper into it, but maybe on these points and just really digging into the changes to the program.
No, absolutely. So, as I mentioned, it's modernizing. I think the best way to kind of understand the change is it's modernizing the program. It's making sure it still makes sense and it's rewarding the right type of business activities that are relevant for today. So, we can go here, what was at risk? Maybe we'll start backwards. You know, Perhaps system, maintenance and kind of upkeep was more complicated to do for, these kind of outdated tech companies back in the, early 2000s. You know, this isn't as much of a priority, innovation priority, as AI is today. So the government's really shifting towards, we want to see, predictive algorithms that are able to use AI to anticipate, to forecast. We want to see automation. Obviously, automation is kind of the word of today. How can we automate, processes in our ERPs, in our CRMs, and all different kind of these central sources of truth. So it's adjusting the program towards more what I would say AI-focused activities, but AI is a broad word. So it can be algorithms, it could be automation, it could be, machine learning, of course, which is, maybe more technical and complicated. But there's a wide range of activities that can be eligible. I think what this will do for, you have at-risk companies here. I think rather than seeing it as a risk, it should be framed as an opportunity. So, okay, how can infrastructure, we look down here, how can infrastructure evolution specialists adopt different AI technologies to facilitate their work? I think that's the question everyone in that maybe at-risk category should be seeing is how can we adjust our workflows, adopt AI, benefit from the credit, so make sure we're still eligible for the credit, but then also improve our internal processes. So we can use this kind of change in the program as an opportunity. That's how we're kind of seeing it at Boast.
Absolutely. And to maybe abuse a cliche, again, not using AI as a crutch, but as a means to enhance what you're doing to actually make you work smarter. So it's not throwing the baby out with the bathwater and abandoning your old processes. It's enhancing them with the latest and greatest tools. And that's what Quebec wants to see innovators in our ecosystem doing. So, Joshua, I'd love to talk about specifically AI native companies and the opportunity that's there for them just because they're coming out of the woodwork. It's a great time to get started on building new solutions because AI has made it so level playing field to jump in and get started. So let's talk specifically about the approach to this transition through the lens of AI native companies. And then we'll get into some of the other folks that we talked about a few minutes ago.
Yeah, so for AI native companies, this will probably, this program is built for them. So, if you are an AI first company, and maybe you're claiming shred, you haven't heard of this new program, maybe you didn't qualify previously. This is a really good time to explore this really advantageous tax credit because it can, and we'll dive a little bit deeper into this later on, it can stack really well with shred and other programs that you could already be claiming. So maximizing these two credits is a really big opportunity for AI native companies that are already kind of using AI in their internal workflows or helping others adopt AI solutions, be it their own or others as consultants. So this is really the most clear-cut case for companies that will be eligible for the CDAE-IA program. So you know. Um, we're helping proactively with our AI clients with how can we make sure that their documentation, really backs up that their activities, which are already eligible, really fit into the program. It's a very generous program, so because of that, Investissement Québec really requires a certain degree of documentation and proof of work. We're making sure that internal time tracking tools, be it a Jira, a Tempo, a Harvest, are up to date for Jan 1st, and so the claim process is as smooth as possible.
Absolutely. And we're going to come back to it later in the talk, but documentation, it's so key. And it's a lot of the work that you're doing if you're also claiming other kinds of tax credits at the federal level, for instance. So getting your house in order really does pay off at the end because it's not just for CDAE-IA, it's going to be for the future of innovation funding across the board, even if these changes haven't come online yet. Quebec is just ahead of the curve and also keeping up with the reality. Like we said before, AI is helping people do more, so they want to reward people taking that initiative and really embracing the latest and greatest. Now, on that note, what about the traditional software companies who have historically been able to tap into the e-business tax credit, take advantage of CDAE? What's a transformation strategy that they can start following today so that, again, they're claiming the benefits that they deserve and that they've earned from their past work, but are setting themselves up to be an even better innovator and also capitalize on that funding down the line?
So yeah, no, absolutely. Excellent question. I'll take you through what we're doing today with our clients. So first step, we have the 2025 claim under the previous CDAE rules and regulations to submit. So we're working proactively to get that submission come end of December. And then in parallel, we're taking Q4, we're really seeing Q4 as a preparation quarter for 2026. What does that mean? Really concretely, it means analyzing the current projects and understanding, are they eligible under the CDAE-IA program? So which projects currently fit under the way they're currently conceived? And then from there, making sure that we have documentation that proves that. A lot of that is highlighting the use of AI. So perhaps team members are already using AI, already developing AI-powered algorithms, but they're not putting it at the forefront of the solution. So making sure that any use of AI is at the forefront of your solution. So, working on that documentation and analyzing current projects that are being done in currently, and then we're starting to look at 26. What's on the roadmap in 26? Which of these projects would be eligible for the CDAE-IA program? Is there a way to modify, tinker them slightly, or just once again put forward the AI component to make sure that they're still compliant under the new rules and regulations? The key word that Investissement Québec has said here is for a project or for a company activity to be eligible, it needs to contain a significant amount of AI use. So that is a bit, there's a bit of gray there. What we're trying to do at Boast is decipher the gray and really from a de-risking perspective, let's highlight as much AI as we can. So it could be the use of different AI algorithms. It could be plugging into different tools. It could be an AI-powered chatbot. It could be the, data preparation side of things, which is essential for AI. So we're trying to highlight all the different work that goes into putting together an AI solution or helping others adopt one, and making sure that internal tools are, highlighting that, documenting that, and making that as smooth as a process as possible.
I love it. And Joshua, I love that you also hit on that point that it is a little gray right now. Like these are new changes. It hasn't come online yet. We're working towards it. We're going to see how this all pans out once people actually start filing their claims for the CDAE-IA. But working with folks like Boast, again, I got to give the pitch. If it wasn't obvious, I'm Team Boast. We'll get more to it at the end of the show, but we have expertise navigating this gray area at every level, provincially, federally, across the board. So best practices we see for other AI integrators, we want the people working with us to follow those best practices too. So just really want to beat that drum. Now, for this next one, this is exciting. Data processing and hosting. It's an entirely new opportunity for these companies to claim CDAE. Can you talk to me about what that looks like, why we've made that transition? I think we've talked about it a little bit previously, but unpack data processing and hosting for me, Joshua.
Yeah, so I don't want to dive too deep into the nitty-gritty, but under the current CDAE program, the data processing and hosting as a percentage of revenue could not exceed a certain threshold. So often you'd have companies that, had, data processing and hosting as a significant percentage of their revenues disqualified from the CDAE program, simply because it was deemed that their activities weren't exactly the ones that fit into it. Obviously, hosting and data processing are a huge part of AI. And so this threshold has been increased. So it's brought in under the program as an eligible activity. So you can have a much larger percentage of your revenues can be tied to this, and you can still fit under the new version of the program. So this is a massive opportunity. I think it makes a lot of sense, right? We don't want to penalize innovators. So I think we really interpret this change as really a good step in the right a step in the right direction. Sorry, there I tripped up for the CDAE-IA program.
Absolutely, yeah. And data is the name of the game. If we're talking about AI, it's all about the data that we're getting ingested. And we'll get into some specifics too, but calling back to some of that boast chest pumping that I mentioned earlier about our experience working across multiple programs. So again, we're experts in Shred. We're experts in even the provincial programs outside of CDAE, if there's CRIC, for instance. But Joshua, if you want to speak a little bit about the multi-program stacking, and also the advantage you get working with a provider like Boast to make sure you're tapping into all these opportunities without overextending your teams or putting more work on their shoulders, basically helping you uncover that entitlement, that funding you really deserve.
Yeah, I think this is a really exciting time for innovators across Canada, due to the, let's say complicated political climate south of the border. It seems that, governments, both federal, provincial, municipal, are really trying to support innovation in Canada, and they're doing it through the enhancement of long-standing programs. So we're seeing a shred enhancement that's already likely going to be put in place following the government budget. We're seeing the adjustment and enhancement of the CDAE program this last year. So there's a lot of really great things happening and support coming for Canadian innovators. Our role is to make it as simple as possible. There's tons of change. There's lots of transitions. We're anticipating additional change in the future as governments are trying to figure out how to stay ahead of this really quickly evolving environment. Our mandate is to understand these changes, really quickly decipher them and explain how they affect you and your business, and make sure that you're maximizing the total opportunity. Our narrative our main message to founders is, what would you do with an extra 200, 300, 400, $500,000? You could go to your dev team or your sales team or your marketing team. I'm sure they'd be happy to have that for their 2026 budget. So make sure you're not underclaiming, make sure you're taking advantage of all the money that is your entitlement as a Canadian company. And our goal is to make that as easy of a process as possible because of our tech, because of our teams, and we're across Canada. So if there's a BC program, will help you get it. If there's a Quebec program, will help you get it. We're not isolated in one geography. We can serve you coast to coast.
I love that. And I think another big point too, which we've been alluding to, is there's still a lot of questions about how these are going to evolve over time. So yes, we know what to expect from CDAE-IA when it launches, but even looking at the federal SHED program, like Joshua had mentioned, there are a bunch of transformational changes basically being pitched right now that are being considered, including again that enhanced expenditure limit, the restored capital expenditures. The federal government and provincial governments also right now have comment periods open for many different funding programs and even just the strategy from the government down. Like they're looking for input on how they should navigate the AI program and adopting AI internally and supporting businesses in the field of AI. So we got a lot of content about that initiative. There's also still shred commentary. A lot of innovators across Canada are sharing their thoughts with the CRA, and the CRA is listening. So Bose is on the front line of all of that. Need to give that pitch. And again, like Joshua said, we're not restricted to just a single spot, but we're not spreading ourselves thin either. Josh is our man in Quebec. He's the guy who knows all the answers. We got a great team supporting him as well too, but we got that expertise in other regions as well. So again, needed to pop that in. But going back now to CDAE and CDAE-IA, let's get into some of the nitty gritty and some of just the technical best practices and strategic imperatives that we want to encourage folks here and our customers to pursue. So specifically around documentation, talk to me. What do we need to make sure folks are capturing so that they can maximize their access as this transition takes hold?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, and this is typically how we look at documentation at Boast, we do not want to add a cumbersome process that your team's not going to follow. We understand very well that if you're telling a team of developers, hey, we're going to need you to add 10 steps to your documentation process, it's not going to get followed if you're asking them to write, paragraphs in Jira. So, our mandate and our strategy is typically how can we have a light touch approach to increasing and making sure that your Jira tickets, that if you're using a time tracking system, make sure that it is compliant under the new program and really highlights the work that you're already doing that's eligible. What this means is, there's internal education here, right? It's okay, do you add a CDAE-IA tag when there's a project that, contains potential eligibility? Is it just making sure that the usage of AI, even when it's not, the use of, complex or the development of complex algorithms, it could be a data quality exercise, but you reframe it to say, okay, we had to go through, treat, process, standardize our data for the use of AI. So really making sure that everything's being framed under the guise of, okay, feeding, developing, increasing, enhancing your use of AI, and at the end of the day, the solution that you're bringing to your clients and helping them adopt AI solutions.
Absolutely. And I think it's worth also zeroing in that the different programs that are available for companies are going to be valuable at different stages of both the R&D, but also of the business growth too. So we allude to Shred here, we allude to CRIC. Those can help shore up areas where CDA might not be supporting you. So again, making sure that you have an integrated approach, but to Josh's point, that doesn't mean asking you to do more work. It basically means when you have the best practices in place to document all of this stuff to maximize your access to one funding program, it's going to help you out when you're applying to another one. And it's going to make sure that you're unlocking everything when you are entitled to it. So when you hit the threshold where you're going to be eligible for SHRED, for instance, get those practices in place today. If you're not going to be CDAE eligible next year, start getting those AI best practices in place now so that the year after you can really make sure you're tackling it and then work again with folks like Boast who can help you understand when the best time to capitalize on these different programs are going to be the most fruitful for you. All right. And now I know that we've talked about timing a lot, But again, I think it's worth maybe bearing a little more emphasis on some of these key points here and just a timeline specific strategic action items that everyone should be taking outside of even just the specific industries we've talked about, the traditional software, the AI first, and the data processing. So maybe just walk us through some of these points, Joshua.
No, absolutely. So, as I mentioned, we're really seeing it as kind of three crucial phases here. Finishing off the CDA program, getting your submissions in for this kind of current fiscal period, and in parallel, starting that transition phase. So I really want to emphasize this point. Do not wait until 2026 to develop your CDAE-IA strategy. We're already working currently with our clients to making sure they're up to speed. And they're eligible, as they're claiming CDA for this current fiscal period, they will continue to claim it for the next fiscal period. A lot of companies are depending on this money to continue investments in Quebec. We want to make sure they don't lose out on this money, and we're really hoping to de-risk a lot of the transitional potential, uncertainty with putting in place, the documentation that we've been talking about all call. I think that's really the central message of today is a little bit of a time investment. I know it's hard to find some time in Q4 as everyone's finishing off the year, but a couple 30-minute calls, understanding which pieces of information are useful, and some minor changes to Jira, for example, to your Git, to how your developers are tracking their work, will save a lot of time later down the year in 26. So it's wrapping up your 25, already starting proactive work on your 26, and then throughout your 26, we really see it as really we want to strongly recommend proactivity. So quarterly check-ins, validating that the documentation's pulling and emphasizing already the work that you're doing that fits into the program, and it's it's kind of meeting that significant usage criteria that I spoke of earlier. So as we get to the end of your next fiscal period, you're still compliant. The submission process will be as smooth as one as possible.
Absolutely. Yeah, and for this next slide, I'll breeze through a few of these points, but this is just emphasizing the advantage that you gain from working with Boast on, again, we have that deep Quebec CDA expertise. We work at the federal level as well, and we're very much in touch with the folks who are driving the change across all these programs. We know the cross-program strategy as well. And again, AI positioning, we have that strategic guidance because we're in the weeds with the innovators in this space who are leading the charge. So we know the best practices because we're working with those folks. And again, we make sure that we have access to the documentation systems that you're using to not really put the burden on your team or overextend you guys. So I do want to jump to the strategic advantages for folks who take advantage of CDAE-IA. Joshua, if you want to maybe unpack too, how it helps accelerate innovation, makes you more competitive in the market, even helps you staff your teams. And this is true of CDAE-IA and all of the funding programs that Boast helps you support.
Yes. I also noticed, maybe I'll take this opportunity to answer. We have a question here. How is the CDA more advantageous than SHRED for the Quebec credit, especially given the new additional requirements? Great question. I wouldn't use the word advantageous here. I would really try to say it depends on you and your business. Both credits can be used to fully maximize your total claim amounts. It really depends on you and your business, your expenditures, your employee count, your activities, and depending on a multitude of those different variables, the SHRED program might be a better fit for you and your business. The CDAE program might be a better fit for your business, or both combined together might be the best thing to do. So it really is a case-by-case scenario. Where the CDAE program comes into play is you're not making, compared to SHRED, you're not making these technical narratives every year showing the complexity of your work. It's more these kind of general activity types that are supported. So if you're doing AI activities, if you're helping with the adoption of AI, if AI is at the central of plays a significant role in your business activities, you're likely eligible for the CDAE-IA program. Whereas Shred, you have to show how in your AI solution, you're constantly pushing the bounds when it comes to technological uncertainty, when it comes to the iterations, when it comes to the advancement. So that could be a more complicated claim to put together, once again, depending on your activities. So we really have to dive in, understand what you and your team are working on, and how and which credit is the better fit, if not both. Um, to circle back to this, CDAE is great because of that. It's more broad, if that makes sense. So it's really, you know, either your employee fits into the program or he does not. So you're kind of guaranteed that certain amount for your employee. You don't come back to defending every hour as you often can under Shred, where you're showing, okay, my back end spent 40% of his time on this eligible work. We can only claim that 40%. For CDAE and CDAE-IA, you really qualify the employee, and then you get a really fixed return based on that expenditure amount. So it's more I would say I don't know if the word dependable is the right one, but it's more predictable, right? We have a lot of our clients have been claiming CDAE for years. They can kind of count on it. They know exactly the amount they're going to get back. Whereas Shred, there's more uncertainty. It really depends on the activity types year to year. And so there's pros and cons to each program. Our mandate is to help figure out which one fits you and your priorities the best.
I love that. And I think that actually teases up perfectly for some risk mitigation strategies and kind of digging into, like you alluded to, what is more predictable about one program versus the other, but also how you can get ahead of some of that unpredictability. I mean, again, I keep saying, come to Boast, we'll help you out with it. But Joshua, talk through some of these issues that could be potential pitfalls that folks could fall in as this transition unfolds.
No, I don't want to over repeat myself here, but I think documentation is the word of the day. I would say documentation, proactivity, and really already starting having those strategic conversations about 2026. So how do we adjust or incorporate AI into our solution suite for our projects that are on our 2026 roadmap? And just keeping this new program in mind. So I think, we can really help early on with the, documentation, with the proactivity standpoint, and we want to be involved in those kind of strategic positioning conversations as well. Whereas, okay, what would this project fall into the eligibility? We can help you, give our guidance. It's not going to be the final word, of course, but give some guidance on if we think there's a strong likelihood that that program would fit into the program or not. And so these are kind of our main levers we can pull to make sure that if you're already claiming CDAE, you're going to still be able to claim it in 26.
I love that. Yeah. And if it's helpful too, we do have notes about best documentation frameworks for all of these programs that I can pull up after we get through a couple of the more slides, if that'll be helpful for the crew here. But documentation, like Joshua said, you need the receipts to show that you're doing the good work and that the government is going to give you your entitlement. And then we got some more risk mitigation strategies. Again, I think it's ringing a bell that we had talked about earlier too, about timing maybe being word number two of the day, and making sure that you're not leaving anything on the table as the new program rolls out, including what you deserve from the previous structure of the program. So anything in here you want to jump into, Joshua? I think the 2025 CDA assessment is one that jumps out to me. What does that look like? And how can folks get started with that today before we even get into the CDA-IA of it all?
No, exactly. I think it's a great place to start is really validate, okay, am I eligible for this program? What is the potential benefit? If you're already claiming Shred and you'd like to see what the kind of incremental benefit of such a program would be, that's absolutely something we help our clients with. So it's really, our mandate at Boast is to provide our clients with as much information as possible. And then it's up to you, depending on your different priorities, to take the decision. And so more information gives you better insights and better decision making, at least I hope. So our mandate is to kind of help that assessment free of charge, to give our clients and just other players in the innovation ecosystem better information in their decision making.
Absolutely. I love it. All right, and I'm actually going to jump a little bit out of order just because I did want to pull up this documentation framework. Now, Joshua, you'll recognize this is for the Shred program specifically, and not necessarily for CDAE, but I do think for folks either watching live or who are going to be watching the recording, a lot of these best practices are going to be applicable when you're navigating any level of R&D tax credit claim. So again, make sure that you fully understand what the government's looking for when they're asking about your hypotheses. Make sure that you're actually doing the planning and the protocols in a way that is systematic and also follows the scientific method. But Joshua, any other notes beyond that and just kind of making sure folks screenshot or take this to heart, what we should be focusing on specific to CDAE?
Yeah, I would add, the time tracking component on who worked on what and for how long is equally important for CDA understanding, they have it's like a 75% of an employee's time has to be done on eligible activity types. So really making sure that we're hitting that threshold for different employees is essential, and that can only be done through time tracking or, if you don't use a harvest or a tempo, making sure that the information's in Jira or even your code repository, so we're able to pull that through our solution. And then otherwise, when it comes to, I think almost the word I'd like to use is understanding your projects and your roadmap for 26, and keeping track of them. Framing them, putting in place a bit of a recap month after month really helps your consultants, or if you do it internally, for both your shred and CDAE claims. So just taking that, 1 hour a month to do a project recap, highlighting for the CDAE-IA standpoint, the AI component of it, or from a shred's perspective, the technological uncertainty component will save you a lot of time come the end of the year. So it's all about, spending a bit of time proactively, putting in place, a project, roadmap, or if you're doing it more retroactively, a project, summary. So as you get to the end of your fiscal year, the claim process is as smooth for either credit that you decide to apply for.
I took the words right out of my mouth. And again, to emphasize exactly what Joshua just stated there too. Here are some technical success tips. Again, start documenting from day one. Think in projects, not products. Like you might have multiple eligible shred, CDAE, or otherwise projects within a single product. So again, don't sell yourself short. Make sure you're in lockstep with what your team is working on and that you're doing the best storytelling to make that a compelling narrative that the CRA or the Quebec government is going to latch right onto. And again, quantify your uncertainties. That goes back to kind of that systematic investigation, technological uncertainty, technological advancement, those baseline criteria for SHRED. You really want to quantify it in the same way when you're working at the provincial level too for CDAE-IA. And again, keep it technical too. We do have to balance that finance mind and that technical mind. But again, they speak the language and we speak the language and can translate it to somebody who may be more of a finance focused person vetting the claim. But keep it as technical as possible so that you're not, again, leaving things off the table that could be eligible activities or projects. And then this last point is one that I know our team loves emphasizing too, but whiteboarding. Get a picture. Honestly, any evidence, we'll try to translate it. And we'll work with your teams to make sure that if you whiteboarded something and if you just have your documentation outside of Jira or in a different spot, let's at least capture it and we'll help you make sure that it's included in the claim in the appropriate format. But don't think any project related to your R&D is too small. Make sure you capture it all and let us be the judges of whether or not that would be shreddable.
I love how you turn that into a verb.
Yeah. Didn't realize I did that. Now, I do have some assets that I'm going to go through at the end of the call, but I wanted to get into some Q&A. So like I had mentioned, folks, absolutely reach out into the chat if you have any questions live. But Joshua, I got some that I might turn off the screen share so that you can just be you and I talking face to face, and then I will reshare. But to kick off, should traditional software companies panic about losing CDAE access? I think we've alluded to this a few times, but maybe put a finer point on it. Is this a panic time or is
No,
it?
no, not at all. Um, you know, as long as we're proactive in our preparation, the transition should be a smooth one. It's just, there's absolutely some uncertainty here in how Investissement Quebec will, enforce the new program. But if we're prepared, we're extremely confident we'll be able to navigate any uncertainty with strong documentation, and with the highlighting of AI throughout your different projects.
I love that. All right, now another one that I think came up, but I think it's worth maybe unpacking a bit more. How much AI integration is required for CDAE-IA?
Yeah, so I've used this word already several times. It's significant. So we don't we don't know exactly, and we're hoping that further guidance will come out on what exactly significant means. Is it 50% of a project? Is it 40%? Is it 75%? So there's a bit of gray there and how exactly Investissement Quebec will interpret that language. Um, our strategy is highlighting as much of the usage of AI as possible. AI is a very broad term, right? It can mean, you know, complex algorithms as it can mean an LLM. We're trying to classify and really make sure that all the work in between those kind of two extremes is highlighted in what you're doing. It could be the integration of an AI-powered chatbot. It could be, your own architecture that calls on different LLMs depending on the task. It could be, your own algorithm that it's a predictive algorithm that is analyzing sales or forecasting sales over the next 12 months. We want to make sure that whatever activity type is highlighted and is really properly identified as AI, so you remain eligible for the program.
I like it. And I think that's actually a good point that you make there too. It's significant AI integration. Alluding to the previous question, doesn't mean software companies who claimed in the past need to panic. It's about using the latest and greatest tools and embracing them significantly, because again, that's going to set you up for your own personal success. It's not even just about the R&D tax credits. So let's put a fine point under that. All right. And now this one, I think we know the answer. Can companies claim both 2025 CDAE and 2026 CDAE-IA? What's our
Yes,
core?
absolutely. Absolutely. No, there's a lot of overlap in eligibility, right? So, uh, we're seeing it as just making sure that any adjustments are being made. Um, so companies remain eligible for 2026 and allowing that our companies are up to speed doing that proactive work that I've mentioned, throughout this call.
Love it. Okay. And now I know that we're still kind of waiting to see how this all bears out, but what's the biggest mistake companies are making leading up to this transition?
Waiting, I would say absolutely. Um, uncertainty does not mean do nothing. So, the message that I really want to make sure gets through today is take action, start proactive preparation, go through a lot of the best practices we shared on the call today, and make sure that you're in the best position that you can be come Jan 1st, 2026.
I love that. Yeah. And I think another big point too is AI integrations take time. Sure, AI speeds everything up, but bringing it into the fold in a way that you can actually claim it for these tax credits, that's not going to happen overnight. So don't delay it because you're waiting to see, oh, how much exactly do I need? Just get started now. Embrace it, document it, but don't wait. Just really want to drive that point home, Joshua, because I think it's a great one. All right. And now one more. We have how does this affect federal shred strategy? So this is another one that I think we touched on, but probably bears repeating. Joshua, what's your take?
Yeah, I see it as an opportunity. As both programs are being enhanced, there's additional funding for founders to go out and get. Um, it could, if we dive into the weeds here a little bit, it could affect whether it's more beneficial to claim which program. So I'm curious to see, as we kind of dive into the weeds of our own clients here, okay, how does the adjustment to this program affect which employees we're putting under which program? Only time will tell, as there's also the the cap on the CDA program also was removed starting for this fiscal period. So, curious to see, how we're adjusting between these almost, several changes to each program. But yeah, there's a lot of work to be done in figuring out really case by case what's the white glove strategy that fits best and makes most sense for your business.
Oh, I think that makes perfect sense, Joshua. I'm going to share my screen again, just confirming you see the live Q&A, correct?
Yes, yes.
All right, cool. So just for folks who want to know how they can get started wrapping up their 2025 claims if they haven't, or even just best practices, we've put together a quick reference guide here. So whether you want to take out your phone and use QR code, or just go to boast.ai's resource section. It's in our dropdown. All of our CDA assets are at the very top because we want to make sure that these are easily discoverable for you guys. So again, this is a quick reference guide on the 2025 program. Give everyone a second to take their QR code snapshot. And then we also have a guide for the transition too. So this one's going to tell you all the ins and outs that we covered today, getting the nitty gritty with some of the numbers, but it's a good reference point if you really want to dive deep. Not pictured here, but also in our resource library, is a brand new FAQ that literally goes through dozens of the top questions that we've heard already about CDAE and CDAE-IA. So absolutely tap into our resources at Boast. We want to help uncover that gray middle while there are so many questions and make this a seamless process for your teams as well. So all that said, Joshua, I think we're at time. I'm not seeing any more questions. This was an absolute pleasure. And folks who are in the room, absolutely reach out to me or Joshua on LinkedIn, on email. We'll be following up with the recording from the show, as well as some additional resources that you guys can all tap into to make sure this is a seamless transition and that you're maximizing this opportunity. But Joshua, thank you so much again.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. Thanks again, Paul. Thanks for everyone for tuning in, and have a lovely day, and looking forward to hearing from you all soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, everybody.
Bye.